tell us, what did it feel like when or tell us what the point that you got to when you're kind of like, okay, it's time to shut this down, and where you're really to the point where it's like, this isn't going to work. Um, Talk to us about that, and then talk to us, or translate that into, what it's like to mentally get through that battle and mentally have the tools, and what are the tools that you used, and what are the tools that you wish you had thought of prior to combat that kind of the mental game and the emotional side of failure.
Well, I mean, it was sort of in 2008, I guess, where we started rolling out. We had a few companies using it, and we had a bunch of interest. I mean, they sort of saw where we were going. I mean, it was clearly a big market. So if you make even a small splash, you're sort of ripe for acquisition and ripe for really big growth. Um, so we were talking to a bunch of VCs, and we're looking to raise a pretty small seed round, sort of to roll out a little bit faster. Um, and that was taking a while. We were bringing some other people on board. Made a few hires here and there, and then it sort of all blew up in kind of the fall of 2008. And what was going on there was when sort of the financial world
Yeah.
was blowing up. So, I mean, what happened was, basically everything stopped, right? I mean, there was no money. I mean, every angels got skittish. There was no longer, money out there flowing. People were, super concerned about everything, right? You're not going to use up your cash now, right? You need to stay liquid. I'm not putting this into something, a highly risky investment. Um, and also there was the huge downturn. So I mean, the inevitable was that there was going to be fewer jobs out there, right? There was going to be no opportunities. I mean, and even the people who had jobs weren't really, exactly looking for anything else to go. I mean, they were just happy to be sort of employed. So it was kind of, it was a lot of things that came to a head. And then also on the consulting side, and it was tough too. It was like a nuclear winter during the fall of 2000. Everyone shut down,
Yeah.
even the big companies. I mean, we work with some really big companies and startups, and even the big companies who were still making tons of money, completely shut down. Everyone's budget was frozen, regardless of the situation. Um, which means that consulting is the first thing that comes back, but it's also the first thing to go because it's easy, right? You can say let's cut off our consulting budgets and before we start firing people. Um, so that was a tough time. I mean, and as we were working on it, we were also finding that we weren't really exactly enjoying building this thing anymore, or sort of selling it. There's a lot of good folks in the HR industry, right? But I mean, not to just disparage them or anything, but there's a lot that you probably don't want to work with either or talk to even. And we found these weren't, the types of people we want to deal with on a day-to-day basis. It was tough. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I don't want to knock an industry because I mean, there's obviously a lot of good people. And we met tons. I mean, we met a lot that were, really, really bright, really capable. But there was a lot that were just awful.
Yeah.
Um,
Huh.
so I mean, it was sort of a combination of, well, this thing is sort of starting to go sideways. We're no longer finding clients easily, new customers, and there was sort of, no end in sight of when that would turn around. Um, and we were sort of less passionate about it. So I mean, when you have all of those things, you're not really going to rebound, right? You sort of have to take a hard look and say, well, maybe it's time to set this aside and refocus.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's what we did.
Um, so tell me now. I mean, get into. I want to get as personal as possible with this on the emotional side, because that's what entrepreneurs go through, and where the real battle is occurring is that big question of, or really it's overgeneralization of I'm a failure is coming through your head to a certain extent. For a lot of entrepreneurs, there's always that like little devil on your shoulder, kind of being like, man, you really way to go, kind of a thing. So what was that like for you? Did you feel that? And and how do you get past that? What tools do you use?
Well, I mean, it's not had. I mean, did I feel like it's sort of almost a day to day thing, right? I mean, even with Flip 2 now, I mean, you could think you're on top of the world, and 6 hours later, you could feel like, what the hell am I doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is crazy. This is too big. Going too fast. Don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the next day you're sort of back to like, I'm the man, right? Um, but I think that's for everyone. I mean, I think whenever you're in a startup, I mean, that's sort of the cycle. And, I wouldn't even say it's month to month. I mean, I think it's literally day to day, maybe hour to hour even. So it's definitely a roller coaster. I mean, and you need to have some confidence, right? And you need to be able to, you know, make sure that you're still aware that you're still, a really capable person, regardless of, how the project is going. And that you still, you're good at what you do. Plus, you need some perspective. I mean, I keep going back to perspective, but when you're doing one of these things, I mean, this is, and if your problem is that one customer isn't happy with what you're doing, I mean, you know, you're golden, right? I
Yeah.
mean, other people are worrying about water, right? I mean, so I mean, what we're doing is sort of like almost fun and games, right? I mean, this is a pleasure. I mean, when I go home, I have a huge flat screen TV, anything that I want to eat. I mean, it's not exactly a brutal life.
Yeah.
So, you need to have some perspective. I mean, other people have it much rougher. I mean, we're sort of blessed to be able to do what we want, right? I mean, to give things a try, especially in the States. I mean, even in other countries, it's a lot tougher
Yeah.
to be able to go out there and fail and get back up, do better, succeed. I mean, so I mean, you need some perspective.
Um, that's awesome. Definitely need perspective in all of this, even when it comes down to just success, succeeding and failing.